Welcome to the iPhoneography podcast for Monday, May 24th, 2021. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the iPhoneography podcast. A little something different today. Greg, unfortunately, can't be with us today. However, I'm doing this is Dave Podner, doing a little bit of driving and welcoming aboard from both of us, formerly of the iPhoneography podcast, Tiny Shutter, Matt Hoffman. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to fill in today. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for jumping on. We'll try not to steer too much into the ditch and keep the truck going, so we don't have to have a tow.
No, we'll do good. I think we have a decent topic to talk about today.
And we have an excellent topic. Yes, and it's a topic that me and Greg were talking about actually last week. And before we went to the Q&A, and that's macro photography. So we're going to go a little bit into why shoot macro, how to shoot macro, and any special considerations that you may need to think of when you're actually shooting macro. And just to go over a little bit, I think most people know what macro is, but if you're unfamiliar with it, macro just basically means very up close in my mind, very up close photography. To the point of there are some people who are I consider experts at it. Ithalu Dominguez, some of her stuff with the iPhone and some other people, it's amazing what they can do. It's almost like you looking at something through a microscope. They can get so close, so steady, so sharp. But even if it's something where you want to show a lot of details on something, either let's say something going like a leaf, or if you want to show some details, maybe an unusual coin you may have, or an old coin you may want to show like the details, or to show some of the small details of something that's happening. That's when you would actually maybe thinking about macro. So Matt, when you do macro, when do you, if you see something, when do you start thinking, oh, I want to kind of switch from a normal photography mindset to this would be good as a macro shot?
Yeah, there's I suppose a couple considerations that I have when I'm thinking about shooting macro. So, I don't have like an official definition of macro, but, macro is kind of photographing, whatever, an object or something so that it appears life size or larger, right, in the photo. And so like, common subjects would be like bugs, flowers, you mentioned coins, just, things that are really small, but you want to see them larger and see the detail. And so, there's all kinds of different subjects that you could shoot in that kind of macro format. But I know for myself, bugs and flowers tend to be, what I end up shooting in macro. And so like, if it's a bug, like let's say it's like a ladybug or something, ladybugs are generally kind of small, and, I want it to show up very prominently in the photo and to be obvious that that's the main subject of the picture. And so I'll opt, to shoot it as a macro shot. And flowers are a little different. Flowers, depending on the scene, could look good as just a regular photograph. You're not really doing anything super special with the focal length or anything like that. But some flowers have a lot of detail like inside them, like that center part of the flower with the, I think it's called the stamen, those little things that have like the pollen on them and stuff.
Right.
So getting in close and getting a really detailed shot of like those center parts of the flower can look really cool. In fact, probably any day now I will have a shot that is like literally what I just described, that I'll post to my Instagram. I think I've been stalling on that because I don't know what kind of flower it is. But in any case,
so you have the picture already taken then?
Yeah. I just have to get around to sharing it or whatever. But those are definitely, for me, those are the considerations. It's real simple. Like macro doesn't have to be a complicated thing.
No, I'm a total agreement there. In fact, I had a situation over the weekend where I was going for a walk and tried both. It was the way just the leaves were on the tree with the grass in the background. There was a nice contrast with color between the leaves, which were kind of a reddish leaf, and the grass in the background. So I did both a regular shot and a macro shot just to kind of see the difference. Also, I wanted to bring up a little bit more details on the leaves themselves. They had the kind of a jagged edge to them, and the veining was the veining in the leaf was a green vein. So there was a lot more detail here than just your normal green leaf. So sure. I was wanting to bring up a little bit more details on that. And I think sometimes macro, you can get that depth of field that really, really stands out like you would in a portrait mode. But because you're focusing so much on what's in front of you close up, it really makes the background even more abstract.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, like, I mentioned kind of at the end of what I was talking about earlier that, it doesn't have to be complicated. And that goes along with what you just said with the background. Because you're focusing so close on something, the background of your image is going to be just a blur. Right. There's not going to be any detail in the background at all. So one of the things to kind of keep in mind when shooting macro is to try to have that background to be kind of as simple as possible. If there's a way to have it be kind of like a single color or just not busy, because even though it's blurred, if it's like a busy background with like lots of different shades of a color or like just a bunch of different colors, it can still be super distracting, from what, you're trying to show as the subject. So a good simple background is ideal, I think, when shooting macro photography.
Sure. And like, well, yeah, we definitely, if you're going to take the effort to get that you're what you're interested in and focus, you want to make sure that, especially when you're posting things online where you can't really control or really point out and say, hey, everyone, look here. You want to make sure that the photo itself draws the person to what you want it to. So something nice and plain for the background. Definitely, I can see where that would definitely help out. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we're still talking photography, right? So all the same considerations for really like any other photo still apply. You want to make sure that you have decent lighting, and kind of either position your iPhone in a way that the light is falling on the subject the way you want it to, or if you're able to position the subject. It's trickier if it's like a bug or something, but you want to have the light and the shadows, in the right places to really show off the subject. Focus is super important when you're shooting macro. Actually, focus is probably like I would almost say it's the most important thing, because it can be trickier since you're, so much closer to the subject. You end up, you mentioned earlier a shallow depth of field. So like the smallest movement of your iPhone, like either towards the subject or backing away from the subject, is going to dramatically change the focus and what's in focus and what's out of focus. So, you definitely want to make sure you're steady and, really fine tune that focus if you can so that it's perfect.
Right. So let me ask you, when you're taking macros now, do you use an app specifically, or do you tend to use a lens attachment?
Well, yeah, I figured we'd get into this at some point, So we're offering all these tips, and if anyone's not familiar, I'm sure you're saying, well, that all sounds good, but how do you actually
do it exactly? Because you just can't simply open up the default camera app and just get really close with it because it won't focus correctly.
Yeah, that's true. And
even though you may want to trying and see if you can do something in post, but doing it before post always makes it better. So what do you use for when you want to do macro?
Gotcha. Well, I'll just say there's a few different ways to achieve macro photos with your iPhone. Probably the most obvious way is a macro lens. So like a lens attachment. And, I know you guys, and we used to mention it on the Tiny Shutter podcast all the time. Brands like Moment Lens, those, they're kind of high quality lenses, but they make a macro lens. I actually think Greg has their macro lens. And there's some other brands, and then there's other just cheapy ones that you can find on Amazon that just kind of clip over the, clip on or whatever. And they're, I guess, more or less kind of simple to use. So I'm sort of moving away from accessory lenses, and I've actually never owned a macro lens except for maybe at one point, like way back in the day, like in like iPhone 4 or iPhone 5 times, I think I may have had a macro lens. I can't really remember. So I don't use an accessory lens right now. My preference is to use an app, and I'll be quite honest, I don't know if there's really any other apps. There very well may be, but the only one that I know of that has like a macro mode is Camera Plus 2.
Okay, that's the one I use. That's definitely my go-to. Yeah,
it's actually the only thing I use Camera Plus 2 for. I pretty much don't shoot with it at all, except for when I'm shooting macro. And I don't really know how it works. Like, I don't understand, what makes it different from just the native camera app and how it's able to focus like so close. I have really no clue how that all works. I just know that it does work, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, and the additional part I like about camera, and you're right, Camera Plus 2 was back when it was Camera Plus, before the 2 part, when I had a iPod Touch, that was the first camera app that I purchased and used other than the default. And not only because of the macro, but because of the stabilizer. Which really, that would be, and that's something that really helps with macro, in terms of getting a sharper picture. because that
absolutely.
can say, like, basically it says, okay, until, and it gives you a nice little color indicator saying, red, you're moving too much, yellow, you're getting closer, and then green, it'll just take the picture when you're still enough, which can be a bit of, if you're shooting something up close that's small, or if you're shooting a flower or a leaf, any little bit of wind can throw you off. So
Yeah.
I find, even though it helps with the stability, you almost have to do like breathing exercises as you're holding the phone to make it as your hand as stable as possible, especially if you're having to crouch down and you're maybe not as stable the base as you want to be, and you're just trying to, am I stable enough? I'm close. Okay. It's yellow, good. Okay. Slow breaths. Don't, and then you just kind of shake your finger a little bit and it goes red. It's like, okay, you have to, that's the only part that can get a little bit irritating for me sometimes.
Gotcha. And that's in the Camera Plus 2 app?
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever noticed that or not.
Yeah, they moved it around. It's at the very bottom. There's a little plus just to the upper right of where the shutter is. And you can go stabilizer, normal, burst mode, or timer. So the stabilizer will basically make it where, like I said, it'll actually use the gyroscope in the phone to know when you're stable enough and you're not moving, and it'll you just hit the button and you just have to wait for yourself to get stable enough. Then it'll take the picture automatically.
Okay. Yeah, I just tried it out here.
Okay. And again, Not exactly great for, you want to take a quick picture, but if you want to be as still as possible, let it do its thing and it works out great.
Okay. That's awesome. That's good to know.
And honestly, I know Ruth has one of the clip-on macro lenses, like you said, from like Amazon, for use when she's doing her jewelry streaming to get the up-close video of something. And I just, first of all, it's always by her area. And I just don't happen to think about, I'll just, like when I'm going out for something or just, walking around outside, I'm just going to carry around the lens that I can clip on, or I'm going to, carry an extra couple lenses with me. I can just screw on if you have one with a case like Moment, if I see something happening. So that's why I tend to use the app more than the cases, like you said, just getting away from the screw-on lenses versus the app that can do it.
Yeah. Yep. So I'll mention just real quick one other like little trick for doing macro. I've actually never tried it, but I do know that it works, and that is basically to use a water droplet like on your lens, right? So if you don't want to invest money into an actual macro lens, and maybe you're not interested in downloading Camera Plus 2 or whatever, you could try basically applying a water droplet to the lens of your iPhone, and the water droplet will act as a magnifier. So basically, like, you can only get that water droplet so big before it kind of falls off, right? But the bigger you get it, the more magnification it will have. The trade-off is that you'll have a nice tack sharp center to your image, but it'll kind of very dramatically blur as it gets towards the edges.
Okay.
But yeah, I should try that. I'm actually intrigued by that.
I remember hearing mentioned that a few years ago. It's like, how much do I trust myself? Because I know the phones are a lot more waterproof than they used to be, but still, water that close to the phone, I'm a little paranoid.
Well, I mean, I don't really know exactly like how to apply the water drop to the lens. I'm kind of thinking like if you wet your finger and then like literally just like, touch the lens, you'll probably transfer at least a water droplet to the lens by doing that.
Just a tidge, yeah.
Yeah. You certainly don't want to like soak your phone.
Oh, no. Definitely, the fact that Apple so like, oh yes, look, no, don't do any. And again, this is me being a little extra paranoid, but these things are these are not cheap throwaway things. So yeah, please be careful. So, like I say, I think we both agree, at least for us, kind of our go-to macro is the Camera Plus 2. And like you said, I used to do a lot more editing in it, but it's pretty much I am almost made it my macro camera app now. Like we have there are certain apps for slow shutter, so certain ones that are good for night mode. If you have an older phone like me, it seems to be like, oh, want to take a macro. I'm opening up Camera Plus 2.
Yeah.
Now we talked a little bit about, how it can get a little difficult and what we have to do when you're taking macro. The one thing that I seem to, because like I said, if I'm taking a macro of, a flower or something on that nature, it's just a matter of just because you're so tight in on a shot and you may be physically that close to something, any little bit of movement can make it blur. So you really have to take that extra precaution. Or now it's a little bit easier if you're taking something that's not moving or you're away from any breezes. I did a macro shot, I think maybe like 4 years ago now, of snow on a table outside. But it was a night shot, but it was well lit at least. And the snow, when you got that close for a macro shot, had a neat pattern to it that didn't get picked up with the normal shot. So that made it a little bit easier, in terms of, how much a subject can move or not move. Like I said, trying to take a picture of a ladybug, trying to get that close. I can imagine that would be a bit of an issue with it moving, you moving, keeping it in focus, because you just move a little bit, it'll get knocked out of focus type thing.
Yeah.
Now, do you have, let's see. Yeah, so I mean, that is something to think about. And also, when you are that close, at least most of the time, like you said, in my mind, when you're doing macro, you're close. So you have to worry about the lighting of the subject too. And are you throwing a shadow? Just you holding up the phone, or are you throwing a shadow on the item itself? Because that will affect how clear and how crisp the image will be, just if you put a lot of shadow out there.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, you definitely need to have, good lighting, kind of a lot of lighting really for macro photography. And then talking about the steadiness or whatever, like another thing I kind of forgot, but this would help is like if you could shoot like kind of like in a burst mode. So even though if you're hand holding, it's impossible to be so steady that, it might take you a few shots to get like the focus or like the part of the image that you want to be in focus. It might take you a few shots to get that. So if you just shoot like a burst, if you could do that, hold down I guess the shutter button. I don't know. I think it depends now if you either the volume button or the shutter button to get that burst of pictures. And one of them is bound to be, the correct sharpness that you're looking for.
Right. Right. And that is one thing, in terms of, because I know in camera, I want to say camera plus 2, if you're using the stability, you basically can't do burst mode. But you can do it where it'll take a picture and you're still going to have to be stable for it to take it automatically. But I can definitely see where, like I said, it's also a matter of, and this is another one of the big advantages of using the phone, is take lots of pictures. We don't have to worry about, and this I know is true for any digital camera, but the fact that we can see on a big screen, some bigger than others, but on a big screen what the photo looks like, you can take 4 or 5 photos, have a look at it and think, oh, yeah, they're all a little off, or this is off here, that's off here. I'm going to go right back down, take some more photos again. So definitely. Yeah. And definitely like everything else, just patience, because it's a more unusual shot, and it's a bit of a delicate shot that we're dealing with.
Very much so. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. I think we definitely.
I was going to ask, but yeah, I think we got everything nicely taken care of there. And well, you know what? You did mention your Instagram, so before we get any further along, why don't you tell everyone where we can find you?
Yeah, it's probably the best place right now. Look me up on Instagram. I'm at M Hoffman Photo.
And we'll keep an eye out for your flower shoot, since you promised it.
Okay.
That's a way to keep yourself knowing that you're going to do it. Put it out in the wild. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter as ProfPod. I did finally join the iPhoneography group on the Artful iPhoneography community on MeWe. Still not as active as I want to be per se, and I know it's not like anyone's holding me back, but just trying to get in the swing of a new thing. You can find Greg. Let me actually pull him up because he's memorized things a lot more than I did, obviously. Macmillan Photo on, let's just keep him with the Instagram right now, just Macmillan Photo on Instagram. You can check out some of looks like he's getting to enjoy his 3.5 days of Canadian summer before it starts snowing again. So he's got some really nice outdoor green pictures out there. And I want to thank everyone for joining us, and we will see everyone in a couple weeks. Right now we are scheduled to record on the Monday, the first day of WWDC. Not sure if we're going to hear much iPhone. In fact, I know we're not going to hear anything iPhone related. And we may not, depending on what we'll see about the next version of iOS or macOS or tvOS or watchOS, probably more the iOS OS, obviously for us. See if they can drop a little hint that some people like how-eyed people can start looking into and thinking, hey, I see this little bit of code here. And knowing that code, that may hint at this thing coming down the road a bit. So we'll see what's coming up then. Matt, thanks so much for jumping on tonight.
Anytime.
No problem. Thanks so much. And everyone, have a great week.
Bye-bye.